Welcome back to Shit Women Talk About. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jennifer and I'm here with Chris. And today we're probably going to talk about authenticity and self-discovery, but we're figuring out our format and what we like with this thing. So bear with us. We're going to try a few things out today and see if we like it. Yeah. So Chris, why don't you start us off?
Sounds good. So I'm going to do a little update here. I've had a interesting week. Had some health issues. I felt, kind of crappy the last few times we recorded. I'm feeling a little bit better, which is good. I've had, it's been Wild Kingdom over here. I've had a possum in my house, 2 dead birds, thanks to my dog door situation. But I'm like, what is going on? But I've also been trying to make some good food, and I made a batch of homemade deodorant and put a little recipe on my social. So I'm trying to figure that out. And you and I've been having a lot of good conversations. Do you have
I think the possum thing was just like, first of all, for people who don't know me, which is probably most people that are listening, but like that. So Chris got just quickly, we won't dive into this topic, but Chris had her dog brought a little possum friend in, and
dog,
it was Roy Kent brought a little possum in,
brought a very small possum in.
It was in her bed. And so she was telling me about this, and I swear, like I would have moved. But Chris is just more, she's better with the nature. And she saved the possum, and it is now living free outside, hopefully to never return. But that I feel like I had nightmares. So, but yeah, we've had a lot of conversations, and I think
good. They're such good creatures. They're so good for our world and our universe, and they're so sweet. And so he didn't hurt it. It played dead. We had a moment.
Yeah. Well,
it was
not no desire. No desire to have that moment.
Yeah, anyway, Jennifer's I would have had to move. It's not okay. None of that is okay. So no. Yeah, it's yeah. And I'm actually much better with nature than Jennifer is. So yeah. So like we've got a lot of other things we've been talking about. So we've been talking about things because we talk about stuff outside of this podcast. We talk about things a lot because we are truly dear, close, wonderful friends who rely on each other and share our moments in life. And so, this week we've been talking about like Kamala. We're here for it. Woohoo! Yeah, hey. We also have a deep history around that kind of work, and Jennifer especially has been deeply involved, and so we have some acknowledgement around challenges there, but we're here for it. It's great. We love it. We're Kamala all the way.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot for me because like all my special interests are kind of boiling to the top right now, advocacy and activism and social justice and female empowerment and politics. So like for the last week, I've been extremely busy and having a lot of conversations. And I think yesterday I had a little bit of a meltdown. I think my autistic joy had a little overload, but I'm going to think about what that means for me. But we're very excited. I think this is I'm very excited, to say the least. We won't go into that. But yeah, we've been talking about Kamala. We've been talking about
vaginas.
Sex and
vaginas.
Yeah.
Your vagina's doing the most. Work for democracy. Yes, it is. Mine is broken right now, where I've had health issues around menopause and sexual health, and so that's a whole thing. I've had lots of conversations over the last few weeks about sex and orgasms. So many orgasms, so little time. And a main topic has been cervical orgasm. Myth or magic? I think magic.
Not a myth. Not a myth. I'll tell you.
Not a myth.
We'll have a whole sex episode soon enough. I can't wait. Yeah,
we will. That's a special interest of both that both Jennifer and I have. So it's good. That's good times. And we've been talking about friendships. So like the desire for deep friendship. And it's been so hard to find that common ground with people sometimes. And
I started having.
Yeah. Go.
Yeah,
Go,
I
go.
started watching. I started reading Platonic actually, and it's a really great, really great book. I kind of wish we had read it before the last episode, but
I know it's on my
it,
list.
it talks about a lot of the stuff we talked about or wanted to talk about. We realized that we needed an outline. So next time we talk about friendships, we'll be a little bit more focused. But there's a lot of great stuff. So if you're out there wanting to dig deeper into platonic intimacy, I'm halfway done, and I already know it's 100% recommended. Platonic. It's a great book.
Yeah, we have so much love for our friends who have we've been able to stand the test of time for, and we've had lately been having so many conversations about like how hard it is to have these deep conversations and these deep friendships, and the challenges and the vulnerability and the courage that it takes to have that. Also maybe like like pour one out for the homies that didn't make it to the friendship level at this point, like peace and
They
love
made us
for them.
who we are today. They made
Exactly.
us
They
who we
made
are
us who
today.
we are today.
Yes,
And, like that's, like if you don't continue to grow and the ocean doesn't continue to ebb and flow, then you don't continue to know like if you only have good stuff or you only have bad stuff, like that's no good. This is good
that's not
stuff.
good. It's boring.
You know?
It's boring. Who
Boring,
wants
boring.
boring
Yep.
lives?
So we're talking
What
about
else? What else?
astrology.
Yeah.
We've
What else
got
we been talking
lots of
about?
meltdowns, Venus, self-love, lots of stuff going on with this whole astrology world. And we've got work and jobs that we're talking about. Both of us are in transition. We'll get into some of that in a little bit, like trying to find those authentic places where we can actually show up as ourselves, neurodivergent and all. Hard.
Hard. Yeah.
So that whole relationships. Woo! I've had multiple conversations around the golden rule versus the platinum rule. The golden rule. That's what I grew up with. I grew up with treat others as you would like to be treated. Well, that's some fucking bullshit.
It's not great. It's not a great rule. I'm
Not a great rule.
I'm a platinum rule gal myself, I think, as well. When
Platinum
we can
rule
do it.
is where we are, and it's hard. It's hard. It takes more time, it takes more energy, it takes you have to be willing to have hard conversations and have communication.
What's the platinum rule, Chris? Because I interrupted you.
Thank you. The platinum rule is to treat others how they would like to be treated. So to treat others how they would like to be treated means that you have to learn what other people like. Because if you just do what you like,
it also means that you have to, as a person who wants that to be part of your rule, you have to tell people how to treat you. So like, we're not mind readers. I'm big on like, we're not mind readers.
Oh my God.
So you got to tell people how you want to be treated, but also as a, people, and you should be picking up on how people might want to be treated based on what they've said or how they what they've expressed, even if it's not very directly, right? So it's a mixture,
Well, and so like this gets into our topic. So like that willingness to show up authentically is what puts you in the position of being able to share yourself, and there are challenges around neurodivergence and where you are on your path there. And so like you want to go into just a little bit, because I had a friend who said, what does that even mean? What does neurodivergent mean? And I'm like, you are not neurodivergent if you ask that question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like right now, especially in this episode, we're going to talk about neurodivergence because Chris and I are both late diagnosed. I'm autistic ADHD and Chris is ADHD, but neurodivergence or neurocomplex means that it's just someone's brain works differently than what's considered typical. Another term for that is allistic. So this can include like disabilities like ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, autism, and a whole host of other things. And they are considered disabilities. So this is a big topic right now, and there's a lot of conversations about it. And I think it's allowing people to really learn a lot about themselves and seek diagnosis late in life. And women are more likely to be late diagnosed or not diagnosed at all. And that's just the nature of our healthcare and scientific community.
It's getting better. I have
It is
hope.
getting
It's getting
better, but I think like right now there's a lot of people kind of rolling their eyes when they hear about autism or ADHD or neurodivergence. For me, it's been pretty life changing. And generally, I think when you bring out like neurocomplexity, you add in gifted people as well, like people who just were kind of the gifted students in school and kind of were that outlier depending on what schools they were in.
All
But
right.
it's just
I'm going to
about
throw something
valuing.
in. Or you were not. You were gifted. So for those of us, so I'm Gen X, I'm 54, right? So
Yeah.
this goes into the challenge here because I was not gifted because I couldn't get my shit done. I was not making straight A's. I was not.
But you're
And
not gifted in the societal,
that's
like the
correct.
way that our school systems are set up
Yes.
are
Yes,
not
ma'am.
conducive to neurodivergence.
That's right.
And so I think that's where this conversation is really hopeful for someone who
Yep.
is neurodivergent. It's about embracing, like being neuro inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
is valuing everybody's differences. No one's
Yeah.
better, no one's worse. There are
Yep.
complexities, but also having real conversations around disability. I think
Mm-hmm.
we, as a society, get really uncomfortable with that word. And I know personally, like I have some internalized ableism and stuff that I'm working through. But they're disabilities. So understanding that as a society and being able to make accommodations and ask for accommodations is something that I've been thinking about and talking about quite a lot.
Absolutely. And that masking part is part of why people think, well, you don't look like you've got a disability because
Right.
we have learned how to fit in and mask because it does not benefit us when we do not.
Yeah.
And so for me at I really realized at 50 and with the help of a psychiatrist, psychologist and neuropath, all of those people were needed and involved, that things that I thought were, core problems about me not being a good person, it's
Yeah.
because I had a disability. And, like that's something that's so true and real. And so I'm really excited that these conversations are being had, because like the age difference for us, you say that you're late diagnosed. I'm diagnosed at 50.
Yeah,
That's
you're
late
later
diagnosed.
later diagnosed for sure. But I
That's
think
late
like
diagnosed.
we go through these formative experiences. So like getting into the crux of like what we want to talk about today, about that like self-discovery and authenticity. I think neurodivergence for us really plays into this, but
Yeah.
part of what the last year and or so has been for me, has been taking a look back at my life and how I've connected with others and how I've shown up, and how much masking. So masking, for people who don't know, it's kind of like code switching or
Hmm.
changing how you're behaving in certain groups in certain situations so that you're more accepted in typical environments.
Yeah.
And so like retroactively looking back at my life and how I related to others, such high masking behaviors. And right now I'm learning how to unmask and how to do that safely because we still live in a very neurotypical world. And I
Hmm.
think that, especially over the last week, that's been weighing on me. It's like, how much can I actually show up authentically,
Hmm.
especially in workplaces or when
Yeah.
seeking employment, right? But one area that I have been doing naturally over the last couple of years, especially, is implementing being more authentic in my friendships and online, and sharing more of myself. Because back, like when I was in high school or when I was younger, I never, like, I had close friends, very close friends who didn't know anything about me. And I had this, like, I was like the fun, like, I was the facilitator, I was the fixer, I was like
Yeah.
showing up to like be of service or value to people. So for me, before my
Because we want
diagnosis,
deep conversations. We want deep friendships. We
yeah.
want that.
Yeah. Well, it's different. Like how we connect naturally is also not very neurotypical. So it can come off as extremely intense, right?
And
So like
it,
we
yes.
talked about like in the last time we chatted here, we talked about learning
Like me
like,
being like, you're a rock star. You're amazing. I love you. You're amazing. This is awesome. I
yeah,
finally
I'm like,
found somebody that I think is amazing. And you're like, whoa, that's a lot, girl.
yeah. But then again, I do that too. Like, so like but it just wasn't normal, right? So what my scripts and how I was interacting in the world, that didn't compute. It's like, no, that doesn't work. So anyway, like learning how to have different levels of friendships, we did talk about, and that's something that has been a personal growth, but typically it's been like really intense. But even in those intense relationships for me, I wasn't showing up authentically because it didn't prove to be safe, right?
Not safe.
But before I got diagnosed, and I know we both are big proponents of therapy, right? I had many years of therapy leading up to this. And that actually helped so much because during that time, I did a lot of self-discovery, self-love, self-acceptance, and boundary work, which I think is like essential to showing up authentically, right? What do you think?
Essential. Yeah, I mean, that is essential. And I think that what I have found is that the things that we started to use as coping mechanisms, like it's a coping mechanism to people please, it's a coping mechanism, codependency is a coping mechanism. It's it's learning how to mask, coping mechanism. And even from as inside as your family of origin, your family of origin. If I was told to fix my face and stop fidgeting and stop, and all of that,
be
right?
Be still.
And don't make, quote unquote, don't make a nuisance of yourself. Nobody wants that much information, right?
Yeah.
Like
you're too intense. You're too direct. Change your tone.
I've been given, Chris needs to watch her tone in every employee review that I have ever had.
Yeah.
And so
it's like, I actually didn't even understand. Like I truly, and I'm so glad that I had this diagnosis. When I say it's like life-changing, it's like you've been gaslit for your whole life. And then you look back.
You gaslight yourself too.
Yeah. You gaslight yourself, but you look back and you're like, oh, this is why there have been circumstances where to this day, like to my diagnosis and my self-discovery in that path, I'm like, I don't understand this. I'm really good at my job. People like me. I'm friendly if they want to get a beer with me. But when I'm at work, I'm pretty intense and we get stuff done. But then my superiors would feel triggered by me. And so I'm like, I'm down this rabbit hole of like how hierarchy plays into neurotypical world and how just neurodivergence threatens that generally. When you ask why, when you don't just do it because you're told to, and that's like core against how neurodivergent brains work. I have to get clarity, and it's not a combative thing for me. It's not, I don't trust you. I don't think you're smart. It's none of that. It's literally just what I'm saying. Why? Or can you provide more clarity? Or, and a lot of neurotypical spaces and people find that to be a direct attack on their humanhood. And it's so painful for us because we don't understand what exactly is going on. My intentions are so good. And like I'm obsessed with like the DISC assessment, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, all that stuff. I had to become, one of my special interests is like human behavior. I had to become obsessed with human behavior.
Yes.
So that I could thrive in the workplace.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so because we can also understand human behavior really well, especially, like if you combine family of origin trauma with neurodivergence.
Right.
Yeah. You got a whole little hurricane of
complex
stuff
PTSD.
Complex PTSD. And so a question from Melissa is, she was like, do you guys, tell people that you're having trouble communicating? And, do you tell people about your diagnosis? Well, for me, at 50, I have spent a whole life inside of organizations, and owning my own business as well. And I realized honestly that I'm a terrible fit for being inside of an organization because they don't care. And I didn't understand that the things that I was doing were because of neurodivergence. I thought I just needed to work harder than everybody else for my entire life.
That's also shifting. Well, that's also shifting, and not fast enough, but there is neuro inclusivity initiatives, and people are trying. And I think a lot of the stuff that makes our lives better makes everyone's life better. And I think that's something that people misconstrue about what DEI really is. It's like, if we solve for the lowest common denominator, if we solve for the person who's most affected or the most vulnerable, then everybody benefits from that. Like part of my accommodation is like, I do need clarity, right? And who doesn't value clarity? But to the question, like, do I tell people I'm figuring this out, like in the wild. I've been testing it out with strangers, and obviously some of my friends, and I have been met with like a whole host of different responses. So like one friend, I had opened up to say, like, I want you to know why you trigger me specifically. Your appeal to my ADHD and trigger my autism hardcore. And she was like, oh, you're not autistic. And I said, no, I want to talk about this. I'd like to explain this. And so I broke it down. I was like, when you message me out of the blue and you're like, hey, come have a drink, my autism has already made a plan for my entire day, but my ADHD is like, yeah, let's do it. But I'm like, I literally am like fighting inside. And so I explained this to her, but her initial reaction was like, what? Like, you're not. And so that's hard to deal with when people are like unintentionally kind of denying your existence. So there's that. But then strangers actually, like, I've had great conversations with telling people that I'm autistic, or I specifically lead with autism. And I've heard so many great stories like, oh, my cousin's autistic and that makes sense why you're so direct. I love talking to you. Like, and I'm testing it out, but where I'm not sure exactly how to approach is when it comes to job searching and disclosure and when to do that. And I think that that's been causing me a lot of stress recently in my current season. But so, but I do want to talk about like that thing that I'm experiencing where it's like, there are so many positives that I love about myself.
I love them too.
With like being direct and all this stuff, and strangers, people out in the wild, they love it too. Like when I tell them, they're like, oh yeah, this is why you're so like different. And I used to not actually understand.
And I think that these things are going to be, the more that you embrace them and the more that I embrace them, because I am telling everybody, I'm 54 years old. I do not have time. I'm done. I'm done with the masking. I'm done with the, you don't like me because you think I whatever. And so I think that the more you show up authentically as who you are, which is an amazing human, people are going to start to see that. And in the workplace, it is going to be so valuable.
Well, you have to tick the box, Chris. Like when you're like, I think what I've been balancing is like, so in this week I have my friend, she's given me a task that I have to complete by Friday. Because I had like a meltdown yesterday. So she's like so lovely, and she's scheduled on my calendar, Stop the Spiral. And part of my homework is to list out certain things that I can do to accommodate myself in really stressful situations, because I haven't really put pen to paper on how I can do that. And when I'm in the workplace, I can say things like, oh, I need this. It's easier, but getting hired, like you have to tick. I'm like, should I tick the box? Should I tick the disability box? Should I, because and I've asked,
there's still prejudice. There's still there's still a lot of uncertainty and not a lot of clarity around how do you actually accommodate people that have this disability.
Well, it's also about like people think of what we've talked about this a lot. Like people have an idea of what this means for whatever. I have so many amazing strengths that come from my autism that work well with my professional path. Like I'm a pattern seeker. I'm about like all of my operational development skills come from like this is who I am to my core. These are all positives, right? But when you hear autism or you hear whatever, you think, oh no, we don't want that, right? And I've asked recruiters. Yes, right? Because we're also disruptors, I think, by nature, by asking questions or saying, why can't we do that differently? But I've asked recruiters, I don't know if you've talked to HR people as well, but like I've asked HR and recruiters, like, okay, what's the real deal? And I got a pretty serious answer of like, I would love it to be actually inclusive and this, that, and the other, but there are a ton of biases. So
there's a ton of
you
bias, and
can,
partially is there's an age thing going on there too, right?
yeah,
So think about like the fact that the Gen Xers and the boomers right now, those are still the people who are choosing to hire you or not.
yeah, yeah.
Right? And no, okay, we just had a thing happen.
It had to die. So I have a thing about gem. So I wear necklaces that have gemstones because if you're not seeing what happened, I have a stim where I play with
That's
my
been on
necklace
for a long time.
and it doesn't come off ever. Anyway, I have a theory that when it breaks, you no longer need what it brings you. So my first one, I had rhodochrosite or something, and it was about like self-love and acceptance, and that broke like 4 years ago. And my sister last summer, she got me this tanzanite this tanzanite, and
Yeah.
I put it on and it was like it's like a clear necklace, so you can't really see it. So sometimes people are like, do you have a piercing or what's on you? Like, is that a bug? Anyway, so I have to go look this up again and see
This is a
what,
real thing that just
yeah,
happened in real life. We just watched
yeah.
a transition
So,
something happen. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's
No, not a
good.
want
This
want.
is good.
No, not want want. No,
Yeah,
you
this is
don't
good. So I
need
just liked
whatever it
it.
was.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
know. It's
yeah.
telling you that you're supposed, like, these are big transition moments that are happening
I
right now.
know.
So
Well,
you
I'm
just
gonna look it up.
actually like, that's a great thing. Okay, so like I'll see if I can
Yeah,
bring
bring
us
us
back
back. Where were we,
back
Melissa?
to topic. Bring us back to topic. So like the fact that like inside of workplace culture, we have people who like I think that they have a small desire to want to figure out how to, figure this out because, winter is coming. They're, the Gen Xers and the boomers, they're not getting any younger. The
No.
the millennials, the Gen Zs, like everybody that's coming into the workforce these days require, like it's not a what
They're
if,
asking for more.
it is a now,
Yeah.
and if the people who are making those hires and being in leadership position, which is my focus these days, is leadership, and if those leaders can't get to a place where they can understand how real
Yeah.
diversity actually impacts the workplace in a positive way, then we're just going to continue to be stuck in the same place that we've been for a very long time. And
Yeah.
so I have a lot of hope. I have hope. I have a
I do
lot of hope
too.
for this. And
I do too,
it's
but
a
I think,
struggle for those of us actually living it, but I have
yeah.
hope for it. So
Yeah, I do too. But I think like for me, and this is why my transition in life right now is interesting because I have such high standards for myself and I have the flexibility to hold on to those standards, but it can
yeah,
be difficult to know that you're going to find the right spaces. But for me, one thing that's a requirement for me is diverse leadership staff. It's a requirement.
mhm,
If I look at a company and they only have old white men, sorry, I literally just don't want to be there. Or if they just have one woman, but she's like in marketing or HR, it's like, get out of here. Because like it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
not,
yeah,
we know like, and the studies show this, like, we know that diversity of thought and background makes companies and teams more successful. Like we
yep,
know this,
yeah,
right? So, but I think a lot of people feel threatened. People feel threatened and they think that there's not enough room for everyone to succeed. And I know we've talked about this with, we won't go down that path, but like with Gen X women and like how they
yeah,
bring or don't bring people along. And because
yep,
there really was only one seat at the table, but that's not the
yep.
case anymore. So
There's
if
not.
you need someone else to fail, to feel
Yeah,
successful, then you
yeah,
shouldn't really be where you are, is my
yeah,
point of view. But it's hard. It's hard whenever you have these standards and you're like, I know what I want. I want that psychologically safe
absolutely.
workspace so that I can show up authentically. But like it's few and far between. And what people put on paper versus how they actually operate. And this is the same thing for friendships and whatever. What people
Yeah,
say to you and what they do can often be in direct, like, they're not always aligned. And so I've been talking to people who work at places and stuff to get the real down low.
yeah,
Anyway, so
yeah.
big, 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 big topics there. But
I
speaking of
know.
like,
Well, I have hope. because leadership is a skill. It can be learned. You can learn it, you can train it up, you can invest in it. And that's where I'm focusing. I'm an executive leadership coach, as where I'm focusing my energy as we're moving forward. So I think that there's hope. I think there's hope, Jennifer. And all of that leads into relationships and the whole part of ourselves and our lives and what that brings to the table. Because you and I both have focused on work so much because we like it. We actually like to work, and we actually like to feel like we are contributing to society in a positive way, and get all excited about things that we feel like we have a purpose to, make the world a better place kind of thing. But the relationships that we have that develop from a workplace, or relationships that we have in that are business or romantic, or all of that, the challenges that come along there can be scary, but they can also be really, really, really great. And I think that that's where we are, as we are on the precipice of creating some really great relationships. If people can, also meet us in a place where we are and are curious about understanding us and
each other. I think almost for me and my looking back at how neurodivergence has impacted me and how I show up in the world, work was almost a safer space because I had specific scripts that I could follow, a mask that I could put on, a role to play. So I actually think that relationships, the work that you do with friendships and lovers and family is so much harder, because you shouldn't have a mask on with the people in your life. So that takes more courage, I think, to show up authentically with your close relationships.
Love's involved. Work,
and it can feel like a direct rejection, right? It's a deeper rejection if someone says, I don't want you in my life, and you're not being paid, right? It's a deeper type of rejections. But I think there's, when people move past that shallow stage of showing up or a mask, those relationships are just way more fulfilling. So it's the only way that I can be now. And I've gotten better at identifying when I'm not going to be the right fit for someone. If they make me feel like I can't show up authentically, it's a hard no for me now,
And that's something that, that you get that little pit in your stomach when you find out that you're like, oh golly, that person, I'm going to say this thing and that person's not going to like it. And then we're not going to be friends anymore.
Our values don't align or whatever. But I think a lot of people, there's this conversation, especially right now with the political landscape as it is, and I'm seeing amazing people actually breaking out of their shell right now and being more vocal than they have ever before. And I'm just
not calling them out.
I'm so here for it because I think that takes so much courage. And there have been people that have been silently doing work on themselves, or people who have been questioning things that they've been told their whole lives. And they're actually feeling the courage and bravery, to talk to their friends and family members about really difficult, topics. But I think people, there's this, and it's a concern. We're liberals over here. We've already said Kamala, right? So there's a lot of conservative talk piece that says it's ridiculous that you can't be friends with people who have different political, and it's actually not about that. It's about core values and how that aligns. And so marriages and friendship stuff, that they break down because of core value misalignment. It is not
about ridiculous checking the political box.
Yes, it's about what do you believe in and how do you show up and how do you treat others, and do you believe everyone deserves to be treated whatever, right? And that's a core value. So I'm willing to have a difficult conversation with any Joe, Jane on the street, but who's coming into my house? Who's sitting at my dinner table? I don't make dinner tables. I don't do those things. Right. Who's sitting at Chris's dinner table? Those people have to be in alignment with values, and that's a different level of respect and depth. I can have an acquaintance that I don't agree with.
But So Melissa's asking us, have we made stronger relationships because of the ways we look at things? I say yes. I also say that I've also lost relationships because of that. And at the same time, I find somebody's core values about human rights don't align with mine. Like, do you believe that LGBTQ plus, people, have the right to be people? I don't understand it. And so if that's a delineation, then for me, that's not something that I can agree to disagree on. And, because that strikes at me at my core and who I love and who, and so I think if you're actively doing something that hurts those people, even if it's by a vote, then that changes our world. And it changes the world in a way that for me, I want to be able to have conversations around that and why I believe that to be the way that I want to see my world. So for me and my house and my love and my existence, that's just an example of, where that line is drawn for me.
Yeah. More broadly, like outside of a political landscape, I think the way that I look at things, especially as a neurodivergent person, or how I approach things or conversations, what I see is that it makes relationships stronger because it also gives even my neurotypical friends the permission to show up. And I think like what I meant by like the lowest common denominator needs to be thought of, the disabled person, the like person, they need to be thought of is because this wacky world doesn't really work for neurotypicals either. I feel like a lot of people feel like they're in little prisons. So when you meet someone like me or someone that's, more neurodivergent or just more open or more authentic, it gives them permission to show up authentically, which then in turn makes relationships stronger, right? But we all have to start from, and that's why like I think it's important to have these types of conversations. We have to start from somewhere. And when you said you don't understand it, like, and we won't talk about this because we're ending the episode soon, but I understand where these perspectives come from because I mean, my mom owned a gay men's bar when I was growing up, but she met her first Black person when she was 19 and she voted for Trump for the first time. She didn't vote for the second time, but she doesn't have a university degree. She got a GED. She didn't graduate from high school. Like she was a good target. But when we talked about it and, she didn't vote for him again. I understand people having smaller or not as inclusive mindsets because maybe they've never met a trans person. Maybe they've never met a queer person.
I totally understand that. I definitely, I am Southern. I grew up in the on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and, outside of New Orleans, I have a lot of family that, they're Trump voters and, we have to, I think, find a place of, do you just throw everybody in your, find compassion? That's a great word.
Compassion and curiosity. And I think when we show up authentically and we allow that space and give permission for others to do so, that's when we can get to core conversations about anything, like outside of politics, literally anything, right? But I think, so like it's a long journey and it's a continuing journey. It's never, we were just saying the other day, like no one's ever fully healed. Like showing up in the world, curious with a growth mindset and compassionately, I think can allow us to have deeper bonds with ourself, like deep self-love and acceptance. That's where it starts. Like number one, that's where it starts. If you hate yourself, that's going to show up. Like that's going to show up and you're just going to go around and hate everybody else. And like, so it starts, I think, with self-love and acceptance and being authentic to yourself, even if it's just in the comfort of your own home. And then providing the space and permission for the people in your close circle to do the same. And then in workplace, like it's just a snowball effect, right? So I think it's important that we try our hardest to show up authentically.
Yeah. And so like exactly, and what I want to do is make sure that for me showing up authentically, it means that I don't have to pretend that if you don't vote the same way that I do, I'm going to have to like placate that. And it's okay that if that doesn't make us friends anymore.
Yeah. This is what happens with our...
That's a really hard pill to swallow.
That's what happens with our brain, Chris. We're like, I try to pivot us away from something.
I know.
And then you bring us right back.
Right back.
You bring us right back.
Right back.
We looking at the time, we got a little late start today because of our kind of moral complexity of the week. We have to respect Melissa's time. So, but I'm glad that we had this conversation about...
I know, me too.
We talked about showing up authentically. We talked about how neurodivergence creates different spaces for ourselves and our self-discovery. Yeah.
And we'll learn how to, I think we're gonna learn how to focus our conversations a little bit better, and an hour. I think we did pretty good this time, though.
We did pretty good, but also speaking of authenticity, like this is who we are. Chris and I are. We are. This is how neurodivergent people talk. Like when we get on a call with a neurotypical person, they're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like the way that we interrupt each other, the way that we add on, the way that our brains go off on weird tangents because it's all connected. Yes. That is how neurodivergence works. That's how our relationship works. That's how our conversations work. So for the purpose of this
conversations
podcast,
are like 3 hours, 5 hours long sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. But for the purpose of
trying to capture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. But for the purpose of this podcast, like we're trying to find the balance for random listeners and ourselves, and being authentic in the way that we, feel comfortable with in this space. So, but anyway, I think it was a good conversation. I think we pat ourselves on the back. I think we pat ourselves on the back.
Good. I think so too. I agree.
Anyway, I love you, friend.
I love you too, my friend.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Good. Bye.